Hey everyone, Natasha here, and I'm here to tell you about Hurricane Ivan and its effects on Florida. Going back here to the warpath. So, Ivan was the ninth storm during the 2004 hurricane season, and it reached Category 5 strength, which is winds over 155 miles per hour, three times during its almost month-long warpath. So, here you can see more detail of when it was a tropical depression or a non-tropical low storm, category 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And you can see it had a pretty long path starting down there in the South African wind region and going up to the States. So the tropical wave first originated, like I said, off the west coast of Africa, beginning August 31st, 2004. It had a storm activity from September 2nd, 2004 until September 24th, 2004, which was a really long time, obviously. It was cited as a federal disaster in 9 states, so Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And it was cited by the Red Cross that there was a total of 63 deaths total in the US. But it should be noted that the Ivan winds and storm surges caused considerable damages in Grenada and Jamaica as it passed by in the Caribbean on its way to the Gulf of Mexico, and as well as Western Cuba. So it never actually hit land in those regions, but it did cause considerable damages just by the high winds and storm surges that it caused while passing by those areas. So it first made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane on September 16th, 2004, just west of Gulf Shores. And it moved as a tropical storm throughout the southeast and exited at the Delmarva Peninsula. So between the 16th of September and September 18th, Ivan traveled as a weekend tropical storm, not a weekend tropical storm, through central Alabama and through the southeastern states, such as the tips of Georgia and Tennessee, as well as North Carolina and Delaware. It made its exit through the Delmarva Peninsula, which is part of Delaware. So from there, it circled back around in the Atlantic Ocean and went through southern Florida, picked up speed again, and moved to hit land in southwest Louisiana on September 24th. And then after its 5,600-mile trek through Texas, it dissipated. So what makes Ivan such a unique case study was that Florida had already been hit by Hurricane Charley and Hurricane Francis earlier that year, and would also experience Hurricane Jan after Ivan. So that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 storms, major storms during 2004. So as you can tell, that's multiple subsequent hits to Florida and the lower southeast regions of the US. And as we know in disaster preparedness, that subsequent disasters can lead to debilitated community resilience. So its impact on Florida was that it had 120-mile-per-hour winds, and it impacted not only Northwest Florida, but also Gulf Shores, Alabama. So in this case study, because it hit so many different counties and did that circle around path and then went up to Louisiana and Texas, I decided just to only focus on Florida. And also, I'm from Florida, and I am from specifically the Northwest Florida region. So I decided to do this case study because of the origination in my hometown. I was living in Pensacola during that time, And, I remember evacuating, and I remember not having power for at least a month and not going to school for several weeks. The overall damage was estimated to be about $14 billion in Florida. And there were 27 Florida deaths and 5 deaths in Alabama. The storm surge was about 10 to 16 feet, and the overall rainfall was about 10 to 15 inches. So it damaged cities in Northwest Florida, including Pensacola, which is where I'm from, Gulf Breeze, Navarre Beach, and Pensacola Beach, and it included counties such as Santa Rosa County and Escambia County. In Alabama, it affected Bruton County, Montgomery, Demopolis, Orange Beach, and Gulf Shores. And Orange Beach and Gulf Shores are counties that are literally 15 to 20 minutes away from parts of Northwest Florida. So, for example, I could be in Pensacola and then 15 minutes later drive over a bridge and be in Orange Beach or Gulf Shores. So the areas are really close together, but overall, the impact on Florida and lower southeastern Alabama was very great. So, the most important thing to know about the history surrounding Ivan was, like I said, that there was 4 major storms in Florida that year. And to know about the command system performed during Hurricane Ivan, it's important to know the history surrounding Ivan concerning those hurricanes that came before and after Ivan. So, Hurricane Charley was the second major hurricane of the season, and it landed as a Category 4 storm in southwestern Florida. And it was this storm that created a unified command system, or at least when it was finally put into action. Because as we all know, unified command systems and just disaster preparedness planning in general takes a lot of time and dedication to training professionals and getting facilities set up. So the Unified Command System, the FEMA state team, began during Hurricane Charley. And the FEMA administrator at the time, Craig Fugate, declared that all state and federal assets that are in support of the counties affected by Hurricane Charley will henceforth be known as Charley Command. So before the Unified Command, there was a lack of formal procedures by which federal, state, and local officials used to engage one another and request assistance. And this unified command system tied them all together. There was an incident action plan formed, and that's a set of response and recovery goals to be completed over a specified operational period. It allows teams to go back and also look at future events. So the members of the command team describe themselves as joined at the hip through this unified command system, which I think is a very good quote, because that really means that they're all working together and nobody's making decisions without working together at the federal, state, and local level. They also had a Joint Information Office set up, known as the JIC, and the JIC assures that messages were going out to the public on a continuous basis, and meetings were held at the center in order to deal with issues and events concerning specifically Charley, but it was also used for Ivan and the preceding hurricane after Ivan, which was Jeanne. So in addition, there is a recovery office in Lake Mary, Florida, and that recovery office works on finding aid to supply to local governments and other public agencies. And lastly, there's a logistics response center, which is located in Orlando, which is also where the Joint Information Center is located. And the LRC, Logistics Response Center, stores disaster supplies so that they can be close by in times of need to diminish response times. So Orlando, if you guys aren't familiar with the structure, the geographic structure of Florida, is somewhat, I would say, in the middle of the state. So it's got that central location, and it'd be great for pulling resources from, whether a disaster strikes in southern Florida or northern Florida. So because of this newly effective system, Florida was able to provide 7,000 responders to aid counties impacted by Katrina in 2005. So this unified command system has been cited through several case study reports, especially concerning Katrina, on how well the Florida command team did in response to these 4 major storms in 2004 in Florida. So overall, just to look at the incident command system roles, the continuity of operations planning focuses on interacting with state and local agencies on a daily basis to make sure that agencies are prepared for a wide range of potential emergencies. And the hurricane program leads evacuation studies and provides guidance on technical evacuation decisions. And these are all the comprehensive emergency management plan, the continuity of operations, the hurricane program, as well as private sector and NGOs. They all work under the Natural Hazards Unit, and it's the state's all hazard planning programs that are encompassed under this National Hazards Unit. So the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan directs response functions, and it's carried out by the State Emergency Response Team. So the CERT chief oversees the operations, information, and planning and administration and logistics and recovery transition. And that's all at the state level. And the state level also likes to take the closest appropriate responder approach, especially when it comes to breaking it down to the more local level. Local emergency management efforts come from the municipality level, and they mirror the state's command structure and functions. And the local departments of health are responsible for the health and medical annex, which we learned is ESF 8. So some key players and participants in the Alabama and Florida response to Hurricane Ivan was, of course, FEMA, because they're responsible for the federal level response, and as well as the incident command structure, planning and implementation. There was, doing research, I also found that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had quite a role, the National Guard, the Baldwin Electrical Membership Company, which Baldwin County is in Florida. And there was also the Florida Power and Light Company and the Red Cross. The Red Cross provided so much. They provided mass care, personal living needs, housing needs, health needs, delivery support, operational support. Personally, for me, I remember the National Guard coming by and delivering MREs. So I hope no one ever has to eat those unless of dire emergency. But they're pretty gross. Anyways, so the Red Cross also provided hot meals. They would come around in a little ambulance-shaped truck and go through all the neighborhoods and give food to anyone that was in need. So I think these key players and participants, they really address the needs of vulnerable populations, because not everyone that evacuated was able to stay evacuated, and they ultimately ended up having to come back and address their residential situations. So a lot of people didn't have power, and it kind of left people more vulnerable than usual, because if they didn't have access to generators and or gas to run the generators, then they couldn't make hot food, they couldn't run their refrigerators, so it was a mess. we were all living out of coolers and generators, and there was really hot nights of no sleep because you couldn't run your generator all throughout the night because that used so much gas. The Baldwin Electrical Membership Company and the Florida Power and Light Company, they supplied resources such as gas and as much extra electrical supplies that they could. So as far as community resilience goes, I found a case study in regards to Orange Beach, Alabama, that really broke things down into how helpful these key players and participants were in assisting with Ivan. And I think overall, there was pretty great results. So FEMA had a 67% helpful rating, police had a 94%, Red Cross had an 89%, National Guard was 95%, and the overall level of satisfaction of cleanup ranged between about 76 to 94%. And it was determined that 78% of the community indicated that after 8 months, they were 50% recovered. There was mostly social impacts regards to worrying about living on the coast in the future. So just worry about whether something like this would happen again. And also worry about economic impacts. People had to do a lot of negotiating with insurance companies. You know, some people that didn't have insurance ended up getting really affected. In the case study of Orange Beach, Alabama, this was done by their National Hazard Center, and just due to the rapid growth and development in this Orange Beach area, this case study was pretty beneficial. I know I was trying to primarily focus on Florida, but I couldn't find a case study that was this detailed in regards to just specifically Florida. And there was several counties that were impacted in Florida. So I think this really shows that there's seasonal residents and an expanding population, and that can really affect the community when a hurricane hits. So when Ivan hit, it really put a damper on their expansion and their development. So as far as community resilience goes, it took quite a while to get back to that normal state. So this was a table that I got from the case study as well in regards to Orange Beach, and it shows respondents' agreements with statements regarding community awareness and responsiveness. And due to the fact that the 4 hurricanes occurred over only a period of 6 weeks, it was not really possible to study strategies after each successive event. So like I said, that's why I used that case study from Orange Beach. It was specifically done because that was a special geographic area in regards to up and coming development. The rest of the remaining counties in Alabama and Florida were pretty well established and well developed. And so there wasn't much resources looking at these other counties and cities specifically. So most everyone was prepared for the storm, and the resources were already lined up by FEMA and Red Cross responders because they had had 2 previous hurricanes. But unfortunately, at the 4th hurricane, Jeanne, people had started to experience hurricane fatigue, like an extension of resources and planning had been overextended. So as you can see here at the top row, Charlie, the public was knowledgeable about the dangers of the hurricane. That was a pretty low percentage in comparison to Frances, Ivan, and Jeanne. And I think across the board, Charlie had the lowest percentages, but the overall community awareness and responsiveness does improve over the course of time during these 2004 hurricanes.